If you don't have confidence in your own idea, how can I have confidence? You make people dependent on you. So you don't want to appeal to people's love, to the fact that they like you. You want to appeal to the fact that they need you. 48 is such a powerful number. It's just obvious. You don't have to think about it. 48, it just seems like something. It's 2 times 24 hours in a day. I was kind of a very struggling writer here in Los Angeles. I was about 35 years old. I was kind of depressed. Things weren't really working out. I wasn't very successful. And I was in Italy on yet another job. And I met a man there who was also on the same job, who was a packager of books, kind of like a producer of books. He designs them and puts the whole thing together. One day we were in Venice, Italy, and he just asked me a question. Do you have any ideas for a book, Robert? And suddenly, I don't know what it was. It was a sunny day. The gods were smiling on me, and all of my pain and everything I had been through in life, it just welled up in me, and I improvised a pitch, probably the greatest pitch I've ever done, about a book about power. And I told him a story, and I kind of gave him an idea what it could be like. He was so excited. He said, Robert, you write a treatment for that, and I'll try and sell it, and I'll pay you for 1.5 years to write it until we sell the book. And that was a turning point in my life. You know, when it came out, I was 39, and I suddenly went from this kind of somewhat failing, you know, like one of the millions of failing screenwriters in Los Angeles, to this whole other world. And it was the turning point in my life, and I've never looked back. So that's why I'm here. If I hadn't met that man, I'd probably still be in that stupid 1-bedroom apartment in Santa Monica, an alcoholic, and who knows what else. I was very ambitious. I'm still very ambitious. I don't deny it. I don't hide it. You know, I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be successful. And I was always drawn towards words and language. I was obsessed with words from a very early age. And then suddenly around the age of 9 or 10, I got really in love with books. And I knew by the time I was in high school that I wanted to be a writer. It was very clear to me. Well, I was reading a lot of novels, like Fyodor Dostoevsky was one of my favorites. I read a lot of novels of Theodore Dreiser. I read Machiavelli's The Prince when I was 15. I was even reading Nietzsche when I was in high school. These were some of my main influences, among many, many others. And then, so I knew I wanted to become a writer. And you know, a lot of people, they can say, well, Robert, you're lucky because you have that clarity. But it's not that easy, because I didn't know what I wanted to write. You know, I'm Jewish, and so Jewish parents, their dream is their son to be a lawyer or a doctor, you know, and I never lived up to their dreams. And they knew I wanted to be a writer, and they were wonderful parents. I shouldn't complain. They never tried to you know, overtly tell me what to do. It was kind of, you know, they were kind of covert about where I should go in life. But you know, I had long hair. I can show you pictures. I looked like a total druggy hippie back then. They were a little bit concerned, but they were very understanding. And when I went to Berkeley and I was an English major, they didn't say, oh, start going to law school and things like that. I had a lot of fun. So after I graduated college, I went and lived in Europe for several years. I traveled around with a backpack, and then I got jobs. I lived there for like several years. I ended up living in Europe for about 4 or 5 years, combined with several trips over there. I worked in a hotel in Paris. I was a receptionist. I did construction work in Greece. I taught English in Barcelona. I worked in a television company in London. I was a tour guide in Dublin, Ireland. I had a blast, and I was trying to write novels. And then I went back to New York. I never lived in New York before, thinking I would get into journalism, because I had to make a living, right? I couldn't just write poetry and novels and such. So I got into journalism, and I got a job at Esquire. So that was legitimate. My parents, you know, they could be proud of that. And I got that job through my writing skills. I sent them a short story. And I was in journalism for many years. Wasn't a good fit, because I wasn't working for very interesting magazines. Esquire was, but afterwards it kind of declined. Essentially, the lesson is it wasn't a good fit for me. And I could have blamed, one time an editor took me to lunch, something I'll never forget. I've talked about it before. And he was going to talk about an article I had written. And basically he had had his third vodka gimlet or whatever he drank, and he said, Robert, you're not going to make it as a writer. You don't have the talent. You're too undisciplined. Your writing is too all over the place. You don't know how to communicate. Go to law school, go to business school. I'm telling you, I'm going to save you a lot of pain. And you know, instead of getting all upset and angry, I was initially, I don't deny it, it kind of sunk in that maybe because I wasn't excited about this career, it was showing up in my work. It was maybe my fault. So then I went back to Europe and I tried writing more novels and wandering around. I came back to LA to do my Hollywood career, and I tried screenwriting. I worked for a famous film director. I was his assistant. Had some very interesting adventures. I learned a lot about writing and making things dramatic, etc. I learned a lot about power and the power game through the master manipulators in Hollywood that I observed. And then, that's when we come to 1995, and I'm this depressed 36-year-old living in my apartment in Santa Monica. There are many, as you say, there are 48 laws. One of the laws is, I think the most important, I can't remember the exact title of it, but it's basically make people dependent on you. So you don't want to appeal to people's love, to the fact that they like you. You want to appeal to the fact that they need you. Because if they love you, love is a very tenuous emotion. In fact, it doesn't work very well in the work situation. It causes all kinds of problems. They'll get rid of you tomorrow, even though they like you. But if they need you, it's like pulling out all of these roots of a plant to get rid of you. It's going to cause all kinds of damage all over the place. They need you and they can't get rid of you. So you need to make sure that your position in a company, in life in general, you're the only person who can do that. Depends on the nature of your work, obviously. I mean, I talk in that particular chapter of several strategies. So let's say you're in a corporation, you kind of don't just depend on one person. You just aren't just necessary to the boss, but you spread yourself out to 3 or 4 different networks. You get a sense of how the whole company is functioning. You have your roots in this place, in this place, in this place. So you have more knowledge. It's kind of spread around. And to get rid of you is going to cause a lot of problems, because you're not only involved here, but you're involved here, here, and here. And you have knowledge that nobody else has. So you want to have a kind of knowledge and skill base that makes you unique. So, and that means just don't depend on one skill, but have several skills, and don't be afraid to do that. That's, I think, is probably the key strategy here. But when it comes to, if you're an entrepreneur, it's the same dynamic for an entrepreneur. It's the same dynamic for me. The way you make yourself necessary and others dependent on you is to be the only person who can do this job. You are so unique. There's only one Elon Musk. There's only one Steve Jobs, right? They're irreplaceable. They're not afraid to be themselves, have their own style. And so, that's what secures their position. So if I wrote books like everybody else, I wouldn't have that position of power. But because I'm the only one, for better or for worse, who can write books the way I do, I have secured a position in the publishing world. So it's a law that applies everywhere. Yeah. In my book, Mastery, I call it knowing your life's task. This was what you were meant to accomplish in life, right? Yeah. And you're very firm about it, and you feel very confident about it. And so when people come, like that editor did, and tell me that you shouldn't be a writer, you're able to deflect it because you have a dream, and nothing will get you to sidetrack from that dream. Yeah. But also having a sense of accomplishment. So it's not that you're a bullshit artist, it's not that you're a con artist. You've actually accomplished A, B, and C in life, right? So if people come and attack me, I don't really care, because I have this that I can always fall back on. I have a book that sold 2 million copies. How many people can say that? I don't care, bring it on. I'm fine with that. But the one other thing I would say about that is that you want to, in the case for all people of power and any position you are in life, I have a law in the 48 Laws of Power called never appear too perfect. And the danger in the world today is, the number one danger is envy. We live in a time of social media, etc., where it's massive envy, where we know what everybody else is doing in life, and we don't like to admit that we're envious, so we attack people passive-aggressively. We subvert them. We try and throw obstacles in their way. We criticize them when in fact we envy them. And the strategy there is to learn how to deflect envy. So if you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, you have to have some humor. You have to have some self-deprecating humor. You have to take the criticism that comes and kind of laugh at it and go along with it, so that you don't appear all stiff and rigid and defensive. Right. So that's the other thing I would say. You have to be able to distinguish between what is legitimate criticism, and you have to look at the source. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So whenever I write a chapter, I give it to my girlfriend on it because she's a great editor. I trust her. She critiques the hell out of them, but I've trusted her. But if some schmo off the street is writing on a YouTube video comments about me, etc., I don't pay it any attention because I don't know who he or she is or what their credentials are. The number 48 kind of shifted. Originally I had like 52 laws. We didn't like the number 52 because it seemed too obvious, like 52 weeks in a year or something. And so I tried to narrow it down to 48 because 48 is such a powerful number. It's just obvious. You don't have to think about it. 48, it just seems like something. It's 2 times 24 hours in a day, 2 days. It's just got a resonance to it. There's kind of a symmetry to the idea of 48, you know. I think I could have done 44 laws because that has a nice symmetry to it. But there's just something, I don't know if it's in retrospect where because the book has had success that 48 seems so powerful, but the number just has a visceral feel to it. I can't even explain. There's one in there, interaction with boldness, and this is particularly applicable to entrepreneurs. It's about how human nature, we're kind of impressed and intimidated by people who who enter in with a lot of confidence and boldness and a bit of drama and surprise. It kind of appeals to the animal in us. We're put back on our feet and we're like, whoa, what's going on here? It's impressive. It creates a distinctive impression. Whereas if you kind of enter in like with your business or your book or in a meeting, and you're kind of half-assedly promoting an idea, it already looks weak before it even started, right? If you don't have confidence in your own idea, how can I have confidence? And there's an element almost of bullshit and playing a con man. And I have a story in there of Christopher Columbus, who came from the lower classes, had no aristocratic connections, was a mediocre navigator and captain, and he went and proposed this to the Portuguese king, this incredible expedition, as if he was an aristocrat. He was full of all of this confidence, and it created an impression on the other. There must be a reason for that confidence. So having a sense of you were destined to accomplish something, that you feel that it's going to succeed, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I'm an introvert. I'm a classic introvert, and yet I've used it. It's more a sense of you feel you have to know your strengths and play to your strengths. So if I tried to show this kind of confidence and boldness on a basketball court, I'd be laughed off. If I tried to show it with my artwork and my painting and my doodling, I wouldn't be able to pull it off. But I know that I have one thing that I'm strong at. It's with words and language and writing. And so I can pull off being bold because I feel inside myself that inner confidence. You have to almost deceive yourself that you can accomplish this. So I can go on the list through classic introverts who've been incredibly successful. Albert Einstein was a terrible introvert, even though he seems like he's sort of this comic person who's good with people. He was terrible, very awkward and timid. But he knew one thing that he was so good at, and he pushed on and pushed on and pushed on it. And when it came to physics and relativity, there was nobody else who could argue with him. So play to your strength, play to what you know, what you're good at, what you've accomplished. And even the worst introvert in the world, like myself, can exude that kind of boldness. You have to know yourself. You have to know who you are. And you have to do some searching in there. So the passion thing, it's kind of a cliche in a way. I want you to look at the things that you were drawn to when you were 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. I do consulting work with a lot of people who are kind of confused about what I call your life's task, and we go through a process. You want to see something that attracted you here so deeply you can't even put it into words, because the way the human brain works is that you don't learn things with any kind of intensity unless your emotions are deeply, deeply engaged, unless you're excited by the subject, right? And so if you're kind of in a field that is because of the money or because it kind of half interests you, you're not going to be learning. You're not going to have that intensity of focus that all successful people have. There's a kind of a level that you hit where the work is exactly what you were meant to do. It's what excites you. It's what your skill level, you're up to the challenge, or maybe it's a little above you, and it brings out the best in you. And you want to find out what that field is or what that subject is. And so once you find it, everything else will fall into place. So for me, I knew it was writing. I just couldn't figure out which writing. form of it, but once it occurred, everything else just fell into place for me. Well, when you're 36 years old, 35 years old, it's very easy to quit because you're not in your 20s anymore, and you're starting to think, I need to make money. I don't want to be living hand to foot for the rest of my life. Yeah. So I understand that a lot of people reach that point, you know, and I was very depressed. I was kind of going up and down and up and down. I think, okay, now I'm going to write this and this will be successful. I'll sell this screenplay, etc. You know, and then it wouldn't happen. I'd be down, etc. So it was kind of a roller coaster. And there were moments when I was pretty much ready to give up, but I was never going to like suddenly go to law school or go to business school. I was too old for that.